Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my workflow. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, designer, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back for another episode. This week, I guess I can announce something fairly exciting in that I finally crossed the 10,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, which is pretty cool. I'll take it. Episode 152, and I think we're going to do a little bonsai tree today. I was thinking about doing another forest scene, which is super fun. Love doing foresty kind of things, but decided instead of doing a whole gang of trees, which you've seen me do many times before, maybe it'd be cool to do a single isolated tree. We can spend a little more time on the details of this particular tree. And see how it goes. This is my second episode trying out Instagram Live. So, see how that goes. Say what's up. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to have the comments from Instagram Live flow into this chat client that I've been using. That chat client incorporates all the chat comments from YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope, but not Instagram at the moment. So, in any case, we're starting here with a little spline. I'm going to sweep it and get started with a little trunk. A little twisted, knotty bonsai trunk. I think what I might do eventually here is maybe expand this thing and use some of the sculpt tools to kind of beat it up. So I'm going to keep it fairly low poly at the moment, just kind of block out some shapes. Matt Cook in the chat. Hey, what's up, Matt? How's it going? Thanks for tuning in. Just adjusting the angle of these splines upward. I guess it's also worth mentioning that yesterday I launched and made live this illustration I had been working on for a really long time. I'm really sort of proud of. I started working on it actually when I was still in San Francisco, and finally finished it up and launched it. I called it Hector the Terrible. It's this crazy dragon scene. Really pleased with how it came out. So it's on my Behance, Dribble, Instagram, anywhere I post work. So go check it out. Let me know what you think. All right. I'm going to add some rotation to this spline, just so my topology kind of curves that way. I'm going to add detail to it eventually, but at this moment, that'll just sort of get us started in the right direction. All right. We're going to have this guy living in a pot, as bonsais often do. Really kind of dig these wider, more shallow dishes that these bonsais frequently come in. I think make this with a this dish here with a lathe nurb. I want to zero out this center point. Throw this spline into a lathe, which is automatically going to make a circle out of it. Oops. Or it's going to rotate it and make sort of a smooth shape out of it. But I think what I can do is turn the angle, turn the subdivisions down to just 4. Maybe that's not the best way to do it because this is rectangular and lathe NURBS frequently want to just exhibit radial symmetry. So why don't I just do this the old school way? Just use a cube. Fairly simple model to make. So I'll throw in a subdivision surface. Start making some subdivisions here. Holding shift will allow me to sort of quantize those. So control them a little more carefully. Here we go. Getting a little dish going. So Matt Cook asks, do you have any advice for someone only now getting into Cinema 4D? I have experience with ZBrush, but love to bring my toy designs to life. Ooh. Well, it sounds like you're interested really in maybe the rendering engine, since you've already got some experience with ZBrush. In which case, I would say check out some of Grayscale Gorilla's old school tutorials. They'll tell you a lot about sort of the native renderer inside of Cinema. I learned a ton with Grayscale Gorilla. I'll show you sort of the basics of texturing and rendering and lighting. There's a lot of ways to accomplish different things inside Cinema. I would say that's a good starting point. Also, just experiment with it. The beauty of digital art is that you can always do it over again. You can make endless variations and iterations, and it's always worth just trying some things out, seeing what you get. I'm going to make some little feet here. A lot of times these bonsai plant dishes have a little feet. Kind of scale them in to give them a little bit of a taper. Let's make them just a little bit taller. And that really is not so bad for a quick first shot at it. Another thing I think I want to do is I want to get some depth on it. Actually, you know what? I was going to throw it into a cloth NURB. I don't think I want all that additional geometry, so I'm going to isolate it do a loop selection with my edge mode on. Just extrude it. Just extrude it in. Just kind of drag it down. There we go. That'll do. All right. We've got this bonsai trunk going on here. Let's actually add some additional bits of roots here. I'm just going to go over my overhead view. Just kind of add some geometry here, add a spline rather. Now, I'm not doing this just from memory. I was definitely looking at a whole bunch of images of bonsai trees before we went live here. I've actually still got them open. I might reference these later when I'm starting to put the branches and limbs on. When I'm adjusting the angle of splines, I like to use the scale tool a lot. It allows you to just increase the size of an angle. It typically works really well. And I'm just going to kind of bury these roots right into the soil there. Looks like we need a little bit more room. So I'm going to grab these and just slide them back in space. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to slide the dish forward in space. I want to keep this trunk centered. Now, one of the coolest things I think about bonsais is how there's this really amazing asymmetry that's built into the the limbs and the shape of the tree. So I want to try and get some of that going on. Now with this guy, I'm just going to, first let's group this, call it dish. Now I'm just going to use one of my pre-existing splines here, copy it up, and replace it. I've already got some of these settings built in. Add a fillet to the end of this just to kind of round it out. It's pretty good. All right, I'll draw another spline or two here, and then I'll start adding some branches and leaves. Again, I'm just going to duplicate the existing sweeps, drop this new spline in there, and just kind of adjust some little things as needed. I'm really trying to keep these curves very organic, nice and graceful. All right, good enough for now. I want to use some, I'm not going to go in and model every little leaf here, but I do want to go in and add some simple kind of dome-like shapes, at least for now. And then what I might do later is get in and start sculpting and molding things, and might even use the volume builder tools to kind of stick some of these objects together. Let's start with half a capsule. Get kind of that dome shape going. Kind of clean it up a bit. Again, we're just kind of getting started here. We're just kind of blocking things out, right? Kind of close out the bottom of this guy. Use this closed polygon hull, super easy. Again, this is it's like a simplified rendition of the bonsai tree. Now when I'm blocking things out, I like to use the same shapes a lot. Obviously, if you watch any of my videos, you're aware of that. And that does a few things. First of all, it allows me to sort of work quickly and just kind of rough out the shapes that I need in the places that I need them. So I'm not thinking too much about, putting in new shapes each time I want to add volume someplace. The other thing it does is it creates a uniformity in the shapes and sort of the style of the model, which can really do a lot in terms of creating like harmony across it. Things are going to match. They're going to be repeated shapes, and that serves to make things like harmonious, which is a fancy designery way of saying match. Things match. So if you're careful with how you compose things, it's actually quite nice to have repeated shapes matching one another. You can see here we're actually making some progress fairly quickly, even though we kind of just started here. Going for what, half an hour, 20 minutes at this point. Hey, Saren, you are welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate the support. And one of the things I really love about bonsai trees that I'm trying to accomplish here is the sort of long, elongated, graceful sort of look to them. They tend to really spill out of their dishes in a beautiful way and have these exaggerated, elongated shapes, which is really beautiful. let's actually, maybe we'll do a few quick test renders here. I think I want to just a really simple sort of background. So probably just make kind of an impromptu cyclorama, probably photography dorks out there. So let's see, I'm just going to go to my side view, let's make a simple spline. I'm going to use this chamfer function to make a real large chamfer. Not big enough. Just add a 0 in there. There we go. And now I've got these two splines going. Just duplicated that original one. Throw those in a loft nurb, which will basically just connect the two. Easy peasy. Cool. I'm going to start with just a spotlight. I think I'm going to use a fairly simple lighting setup for this guy. Let's actually organize this a bit. I always like to keep my lights below the camera here. So I like to do sort of, background element, camera, lighting. You don't have to do it that way, but I find that if I keep my project organization somewhat consistent from project to project, it just helps me remember. That way I can spend more time kind of working on the image or the model, and less time thinking about where all the crap is. I know it doesn't sound like a creative, fun thing to do, but staying organized actually helps you focus on the creativity, not searching around for all your stuff all the time. Alright, so we got a spotlight going on. Let's put some area shadows on there, add just a little bit of warmth to it. Let's see what we got. It's not going to look great right out of the gate. I'm going to add ambient occlusion. And lately I've been really enjoying kind of making that a little lighter than it is by default, and adding a little bit of blue to the shadow. There we go. I'm also going to add an area light here. I guess for people who have joined since I've started, say, last night or sometime this morning, I crossed the 10,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. I guess I just really want to thank everybody for tuning in. Feels like a pretty big milestone after 150 some odd episodes to break that 10,000 subscriber mark. I don't know. It's feels good. Glad that people are out there getting a little value from it, learning a thing or two, hopefully having fun making their own art. So, thanks everybody. So we're a little bit early in the process, but I'm going to go ahead and just add some GI here. Turn the settings down a little so it renders a little faster. You can see the difference between same light setup, just checking out the difference between scene with and without ambient occlusion turned on. we're going to, sorry, global illumination rather, we're going to see the light travels a lot further, bounces more realistically, and looks just a lot better. So going to go ahead and turn the gamma up here. Let's say 1.8. Just going to make that light go even further. You know, it's very simple and reductive, but I'm pretty happy with how this is coming together so far. It's been a fairly quick process, but I'm digging it. You can see how much further the light travels when we turn that gamma up. Nice. I didn't expect to be able to get into it so quickly, but let's try to add a little bit of texture here. Let's get some nice sort of brown color going for the trunk here. And I love using some of these built-in surfaces here from Cinema. You can really get some great stuff done. Grab this wood texture and turn it way down. I don't want a ton of wood in the color channel necessarily. Let's see what we got there. What I am going to do is incorporate that into, so yeah, even the basically default version of it adds a lot of interest and some cool stuff. What I am going to do is add it to the bump channel, add more of it to the bump channel, which is going to look cool, I think. So set driver, I'm going to make this the driver. I'm going to go down to my bump, turn that on, and hit expression, set driven. Let's see it here. Let's see if it showed up. I'm going to delete that expression, just do it manually. Because I've realized that I want to change this to sort of a grayscale version of the texture. But first I'm going to turn the scale down a little bit. I'm going to add more red here. Turn this texture down just a hair. It's a little bit too much for me there, but then I'm going to go over, just going to drag it over to my bump channel. And then turn this to a grayscale version because that's, the bump channel really reads from black to white. So a little bit of blur to it, kind of turn it down a little bit. Actually, I also want to turn down the contrast. I think I can, well, I can do that manually just by going from a light gray to a dark gray, so we're not quite as contrasty. A softer edge to that bump. Now let's see what we've got here. Getting there. That's interesting. Went from 10 or 11 viewers to 1 viewer. Wonder if everything's working here. Oh, there we go, 15. Little error there, all good. Maybe we could turn this bump up a little bit. It's not really seeing much go on there. I also want to add a little kind of atmospheric light. Ooh, this red looks much better. I think I'm going to do that by cheating a little bit and just making this background texture have a little bit of luminance to it. So let's make it a cool gray color here. I'm going to copy that over into the luminance channel. Oh, got to turn it on first. Let's turn that down to like maybe 10%. And that's just going to give us some sort of overall brightness to the scene. Also going to add just a little bit of reflection, say 5%. We'll blur that out a bit. Let's see what we got. We are getting a little bit of a bump. It's not quite what I want at this point yet. Maybe I need to turn it up a little. Let's turn that up. Let's go darker here. Turn that blur up too. So, we'll probably need to go in and adjust the aliasing settings. But I don't want these hard ridges here. I don't want to smooth that out a bit. And that background color is working for me. Cool. I think we should get some leaf texture going on here. And that'll be green. I'll do the yellowish end of green here. And let's do a test rendering. I know I'm going to want to sort of break this up from a flat green, so what I'll probably do is turn on this diffusion channel and add a little noise to that. I want to make the noise really small, so we've got like the 10% range. Just that clipping. Turn down the darkness, turn up the brightness there. Definitely getting some bump now. I think this is just going to come down to aliasing settings here. Turn up this fill light a little bit. And maybe duplicate it. This guy, I'm going to turn the shadow off on and turn it down even more, make him even bluer. Just pushing and pulling, adjusting the settings, seeing what we get here. I still think that noise is a little bit too strong. I'm going to drag this high clip down a little bit. What that's basically going to do is increase the amount of white space in the noise. The low clip will increase the amount of black. The high clip will do the opposite. So I like adjusting these sliders here. You can really control a lot more carefully what the noise is doing, which is good. A lot more brightness now out of this guy. I think it's good. The spotlight, however, got maybe a bit too broad. Let's see what we got here. I want to break this, continue breaking up these leaf shape a little bit. So I'm adding some subsurface scattering, which is going to allow light to penetrate into the surface and give it a much more interesting, realistic look. I'm also going to add some noise to the alpha channel here. Just kind of break it up a little bit. Again, I'm adjusting this clipping here. And the scale should probably be in the 20% range. Just kind of poking some holes. Let's check out these different types. I think this fire noise, let's give that a shot. A lot of contrast in this guy. See what that gets us. I think this is really going to take some experimentation here to get it right, but we'll see. And if it's not working, I might go back to just these clean, simple shapes. There's really nothing wrong with those. Very kind of graphic and reductive. While that's rendering, it's going to take a lot longer because I added that alpha and subsurface scattering. Let's go ahead and I'm going to turn the specular down on the tree trunk a little bit. And then I want to make the dirt texture here for the inside of this dish. It's going to have very low specularity, so let's turn that way down and make it kind of wide, even. And it's going to be brown, but I'd like it to sort of contrast with what's going on in the trunk itself. I don't want them to be too close to one another. Maybe I should add a little stone or a pebble or something. A lot of times the really beautiful bonsais have a little ornamentation in the dish itself. Definitely think some noise is going to help this dirt, so I'm going to just add some noise here, add some red to it. Keep it fairly large. And I'm going to push my luck and throw it in the displacer as well, just to kind of break it up a little. Let's see what we've got. Interesting. Well, I like it actually. Maybe a little bit too strong. I do like what it's doing for the shadowing. Let's go into this alpha here. And turn up this dark. Maybe turn down the contrast a little bit as well. Yeah. Actually, pleasantly surprised we get this so close on the first shot. Now, that strong texture does make you sort of lose the top edge, or really, the form of these individual pieces of tree branch here. I'm going to add a smoothing deformer to this group because what I want to do is, I don't want that super hard edge to the bottom of these limbs. I want to round them out a little bit. That's pretty close. It's kind of making football shapes out of them though, so let's see what we can do there. I don't know if that's quite it. Another thing I could do is just throw them all on the subdivision surface. That's definitely going to make them take a super long time. Let's try to combine that with the polygon reducer. Not so bad, I guess. I think because the topology has changed so much, it might do some strange things with the way our texture's reading. So that goes. So I think we ought to do something with the dish here itself. That should be a ceramic dish of some variety. Maybe a light blue color here. Mesh with the background. We'll turn off luminance though. Just throw that on there. And we should add some noise to it as well. While we're playing with noise, let's keep it going. I'm going to add some little white dots to it. It's too far down. What I'm also going to do to try and make it look like a sort of realistic glaze. I'm going to take the same color channel, same noise channel, I should say, and I'm going to add a reflection. I'm going to open up the mask here. I'm going to take my color, this noise from the color channel, go into my reflection channel, and put it on this mask here. Mask that up, drag it into the wrong part, throw it right here on this texture, yeah? What I'm going to do is change the color here to black. What that'll do is mask out this new really bright reflection to everything except for the little white dots. I'll turn that down a bit. But that might make this look a little bit more like a realistic ceramic glaze. And I'm actually happy with how this smoothing is going, and the polygon reducer isn't killing me too much in terms of texture, not so bad. I'm going to turn the scale up a little bit here, surprisingly. And just continue to decrease the contrast. Wasn't really getting much displacement here, so I'm turning that up. I think part of the problem was that I still had that really light color in for the color 1. That needs to be a dark color to properly, to have enough contrast to properly displace. I'm also thinking that this this noise color is just a bit too much. I'm just going to make that really light. Since I've got it set to multiply, it's just going to make it more subtle overall. I want a little more contrast between the color of the trunk and the color of this. So I'll make it more of a sandy kind of color, and I'm going to go into this trunk and make it a little darker and a little redder. Actually, let's even go into that wood color. Just bring this into the red a little further and add a little more saturation there. Right, getting somewhere. Right. This next pass is going to show us what that dish looks like. It's kind of our last item to some texture here. I think as nice as this is going, I think we need to add a little, a couple more of these shapes here. Ooh. Let's turn these guys off for now. Computer's a little bit unhappy. So it's rendering and streaming. And we're copying geometry around. think especially in this sort of bigger cluster of branches here, we don't have any of these tiny guys. Ali Khan on YouTube asks, running C4D and live streaming at the same time takes a lot of RAM. How are you doing that? I don't know. I think just abusing my computer is probably the most accurate answer. A lot of people are surprised that I run all of this off of the 2015 MacBook Pro. So, yeah, I don't have that fancy of a setup. I abuse this guy pretty hard. In fact, I'm worried one day it's just going to die on me. But that's all right. It's the tool that I'm here to use. I'll get a new computer when I need to. It's here to serve its purpose. And it's been really great. It's been a workhorse. I've gotten a lot done with this guy. I've been using it for several years now. I think actually, though, this might be my last Macintosh. Just knowing that I'm using increasingly more RAM and I'm really enjoying live streaming, which I wasn't necessarily planning on doing when I first got this computer. But I think I'm going to switch over to PC, maybe get a desktop. Continue using this laptop for, watching YouTube on the couch and stuff like that, simple stuff. But then I'll have a slightly higher powered machine, which I can use for live streaming and rendering out animations and stuff like that. So actually, if anyone has a suggestion for a PC that has a nice video card and works well with cinema, holler at your boy. I don't know a ton about computers, to be honest. I know I like using them, but when people start asking about all the different crazy specs, I tend to stop paying attention. Probably something I should learn a bit more about, but you know how it goes. All right, I think it's looking a little better now that we've got a handful of additional shapes in here. Got it for about an hour. Let's go here and check out. Yeah, see, I'm liking the way this dish is looking. Got some reflections in the little white specks here. And it looks kind of like a nice ceramic dish that a bonsai plant might live in. Got a little bit more displacement going on here. I think I might even turn the displacement up on that sand. But I'm definitely liking the contrast in color a little more between the trunk and the sand. Yeah, you see how in this rendering they're much closer to one another? Now they're a little bit further apart. That's good. That is good. I'm just going to turn this up a bit. Nice. Let me go ahead and turn the contrast down even a little further. Scale up just a little bit more on this fire texture. It's this noise that I've got in the alpha. Getting awful close. Instagram Live kind of cut out on me there. I think it's got like a 45 or 50 minute max, something like that, but I've kicked it back on again. Even though we are getting pretty close here. Not going to be running it too much longer. Now this guy's kind of floating, so I'm going to scoot this cyc up a little. Turn on my polygon reduction again. doing its calculation. There we go. All right, and the test render. Let's see what we got. Assuming everything's good, I'm just sort of setting us up here for final rendering. Turn up the size a little bit, turn up the settings a little bit. So I'm getting pretty happy with this. This is kind of a quick one. You know, some weeks they come together quicker than others. Turn up some of the subdivisions on this dish, kind of smooth her out a little bit. I just want to check that my displacements are high enough here and that our final pass on these leaf textures are a little stronger. Sometimes around this time, I like to go through and just sort of see where we started from. So here's our first rendering. We had a lot of stuff kind of blocked out at that point, but you know, obviously the lighting needed work. Here's the addition of that wood texture. Some bump, adding luminance to the background, adding some green to that set of leaf shapes, smoothing the bottoms out and adding some alpha, starting to texture the dish. Now this might be a record in terms of the speed in which we've created, or that, you know, just a tiny amount of test renderings. This is only, what? How many renders have we done here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18. Not so many. We typically do more than that. Yeah, we're really getting there. Got this final set of leaves. We added a few more of these half bubble shapes. I like that the bottoms have sort of a straight flat edge, which gives us like a really nice kind of linear quality to the image. There's this, you know, harmony in the shapes, and that these top bubble shapes are sort of repeated, but then they've all got this long, even, flat kind of linear quality running through them. Nice twisted trunk shape with some cool texture to it. And yeah, you know, I think this sort of image goes to show you that you don't have to have crazy modeling skills. You just kind of have to have an idea and an okay composition. Really, this is accomplished with, you know, a primitive that we've cut in half, a very simple loft nurb background, you know, a cube that has a couple of extrusions and ring cuts applied to it that we've thrown in a subdivision surface. You know what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 sweep nurbs, and yeah, just these repeated capsule shapes. So very, very simple. 5 textures, 3 lights, your standard Cinema 4D renderer, and we are in pretty good shape. Handful of noises. Noises? Also looks better now that we're not floating here anymore. Nice. So I might go even just a little bit higher on this displacement. Let's see, they're what, 5-6 minute renderings? It's really not so bad. I think this final one with the anti-aliasing turned up and some of the settings cranked took a little bit longer, but it's all right. Ooh, I'm glad I did this last test because that guy is floating off in space. I want to connect him to the trunk. There we go. There we go. This guy's kind of floating off in space too, but he's not casting weird shadows, so I kind of don't mind as much. I really like the way he's catching the highlights from the spotlight above, so I'm hesitant to change him too much as we go into this final rendering. He doesn't appear to be floating in the same way that this guy does because this shadow is cast in that specific way. So let's see what we got. Yeah, and I was expecting to need to go, I was expecting the need to arise where we'd have to expand these sweep shapes, kind of stick them together, and then go through and kind of sculpt some inconsistencies in them, kind of make it a little more realistic, a little bit more of a gnarly trunk. But, it's come together nicely as a very streamlined, graphic, simplified kind of rendition of a tree. So, to be honest, I'm happy to just leave it here. I'm going to let it roll. This is going to turn out to be a little bit of a shorter episode of the practice than is normal, but it's all right. Sometimes a piece will come together a little bit quicker. All right, so now we've got our final rendering coming out. I'm going to fire up Photoshop so she's ready when it's time to retouch. And we'll be back with you guys in just a sec. All right, here's our final test rendering here. Sort of leave that up as this final one's running. And now as we're rendering our final view, anyone have any questions? Anything they're working on? Maybe even if you have a link to a work in progress, you send it my way through the chat and we can take a peek and discuss it. take a screenshot of this. Sometimes these pre-passes look so cool. Something I like to do frequently is just turn the view to constant shading. What that does is it takes out a lot of the shading and lighting effects and gives you a pretty flat color look at things. And sometimes, you know, it's almost like squinting your eyes and stepping back. It allows you to take a look at your piece in a simpler, more reductive view, which a lot of times can give you clues as to whether or not your composition is working or your layout is working. Sometimes you get a little too caught up in how the shading might be or how, you know, a certain texture might look, and you're forgetting more basic considerations like, you know, composition and layout and things like that. So it's always good to take a step back and, you know, reevaluate things. It's also nice sometimes to throw on this garage shading and go to your options and turn on your linear workflow, turn on your shadows. You can get a pretty decent look. Look at that. You know, throws pretty nice shadows on the piece actually. Transparency. Let's just turn it all on and take a peek at what we got. I'm not going to turn those tessellations on or anything like that. It's pretty nice though, huh? I'll take a screenshot of that as well. I don't know why we've got that dark line kind of curving in. I think that's a weird shadow effect from this loft nerve. Oh, I bet I know what it is. Let's flip the normals here. Yeah, nothing. I think with a loft, it wants to read the outside of the shape as the outer edge, but if you flip the normals, then we'll have the inside shape being read properly, which is where our geometry and point of views lie. But who knows? A little bonsai down there. Pretty cool. And it can be really fun to just kind of pan around the 3D model. Check it out. Check it out from different angles. I might even wind up doing a couple alternative views of this guy. Maybe I should do that. I'll take this camera here. I'll do this off the air likely, but I'll just kind of rotate around. Maybe there's an alternate point of view that looks pretty sweet as well. Should make the loft a little wider. the bump channel works really well with this wood texture in the way that it sort of catches the edge here. Get those little tiny highlights. And now that we've got a larger rendering with anti-aliasing turned on, there's going to be nice smooth ridges. And it's not super realistic the way these rings and things are on the tree, but I think it looks pretty cool still. Still looks pretty cool. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. Also like the way we've got these kind of reflective white specks in this dish down here. Makes it feel like a piece of pottery, I think. Got some new viewers on Instagram Live. What's up, guys? This is my 152nd episode of the practice, but it's only the second time that I've streamed live on Instagram, so trying some new stuff out. Unfortunately, I don't have the, like I mentioned before, I don't have the chat integration on my laptop screen here like I do with YouTube and Twitch and all that. So I think I'm missing some of the comments that come through from Instagram Live, which is too bad. But here's the model, alternate camera angle of this cool bonsai tree we created live on the air today. Right now we're rendering out the final view. Here's our final test rendering, which is basically what a piece is going to look like. Getting there. Right. So I think we're done with the pre-passes. Any day now. That subsurface scattering is really costing us some time here in terms of the final rendering, but it's all right. Come on, there we go. It takes this perspective view longer to update because I've got all this enhanced OpenGL stuff going on. I'm going to turn that down just so we're rendering a little bit quicker. That's better. Yeah, you could probably hear my fan running pretty hard too, Carlotta. Thanks for watching, though. Yeah, we've been preparing subsurface caches for a minute here. And here's the final test rendering we did for folks just tuning in. Some really nice effects. some wood grain texture here. Got some subsurface scattering, a little bit of alpha going on in these very simplified leaf shapes. Some little reflective bits in this ceramic dish down here. And now we're just getting into the final rendering here. It's taking a minute. I guess it's worth asking, for pieces like this where the final output's going to take, 15 or 20 minutes to render, is it worth just cutting off the live stream of the video and letting it run off the air and just posting the final piece later? I guess you can let me know in the comments below, but yeah, is it worth? I guess, when you're viewing it on YouTube after the fact, you can just skip through all this, which is beautiful. But when we're live streaming, of course, you can't skip through it. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It does give everyone an opportunity to ask questions or share work or hear me run my blabbermouth. But it is a little bit tedious, perhaps. Seems that viewership tends to drop off around this time of the show anyway. All right, we've gotten through our pre-passes. Everything is cached, and now we are finally rendering. This wood grain looks a whole bunch smoother, which is nice. Yeah, that's a good point, Ollie. I'm not sure how much time it adds. I'm sure it's some. I really, the concept of this show is to just share the entire process. And I guess that includes the rendering as well. And I guess I should also be wiser about not including, lighting setups or, material qualities that tax the computer and require additional rendering time. But yeah, the whole idea of this show, the whole concept is that we just show it all, show everything. But the format of the show has evolved and changed over the years, and it can evolve and change further depending on what everyone wants to see. Yeah, I hear you, Carlotta. Makes sense. And it's too bad you're tuning in a little bit late. For the first more than half of the show, it was all, there wasn't a lot of waiting around. It was modeling and making the darn thing. But I guess that's what happens with 3D work is at the end of the process, you gotta sort of wait for it to render. It might also improve when and if I get myself a faster machine here. So it's something that's definitely on the roadmap. It's another few minutes here, I suspect. Now, last week we did a thing where I had created an illustration that had a very simple 10-frame animation to it. So what I did was I rendered the first frame and retouched that in Photoshop. And then I killed the live stream and just rendered the remaining 9 frames off the air and showed those on my Instagram page later as a final animation. It'd be a reasonable process to show. These little reflective bits in the pot here look pretty cool, especially now that we've increased the quality of the rendering and the subdivisions in the pot. It's nice and smooth, which has a reasonable sort of ceramic look to it. What I should probably do is never add subsurface scattering to an image that I'm going to render while I'm live streaming. But I love it. It makes things look so good. I think we finally achieved the right amount of displacement in this sand down here. Got that sort of rough edge, which is nice. This is a little weird. We can retouch that if we want to. Right now we're rendering through some of the densest, most overlappy clumps. So that's really sort of the final push here. APRXM8 Graphics on YouTube asked, what are my computer specs? Pretty low, surprisingly. This is a mid-2015 MacBook Pro. When I got it, I did max out the RAM. I got the good video card, but it's a little outdated, to be honest. I guess while that's finishing up, I might as well share this set of rules from Werner Herzog, his 24 rules. Super, super fascinating. Thought it was worth typesetting and adding to my desktop here. Google Werner Herzog's 24 rules, and you will really like them. Super, super inspirational. Number 10 is one of my favorites, thwart institutional cowardice. Love it. All right. I'm almost there. Thanks, Stro. Appreciate it. The rendering's taking a little longer than I thought it might. I think people are getting bored, unfortunately, but we're almost there. I'm going to hop over into Photoshop, do a little bit of color correction and retouching. I'm going to call it a finished piece. The best way to get started, Ali? Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the kind of things that you want to make. It depends on why you want to get into it. Um, I would say just YouTube tutorials. If you're looking to just dabble a little bit, the lowest cost way to do that would be to download a copy of Blender, which is a fairly powerful open source free 3D application. And just start doing YouTube tutorials. There's a ton of resources available. It's more about your appetite for learning than it is any other thing that's going to hold you back. Don't worry too much about your computer at first. Don't worry too much about all these superfluous things. Just, you know, start now with whatever you have. If you find that you're really enjoying it, then maybe you buy yourself a more powerful machine or invest in a 3D suite like Cinema 4D. Um, that's basically how I started. Um, I got Blender at first and was having a tough time with it, to be honest. I think the interface isn't quite as intuitive as Cinema is. I did have the advantage of, knowing Creative Suite and Illustrator and Photoshop. They're not exactly related, but I think there's definitely some crossover. I was also lucky because I went to design school and I studied, illustration and graphic design. So I'd been developing my eye for a number of years before I started working with 3D stuff. So I think that's the other thing is just having a computer and the software and knowing where the buttons are isn't going to get you that far. I mean, it'll get you it'll get you started, it'll get you in the door. But if you want to make work that's impressive or exciting, you have to develop your eye. That's I think the most fundamental thing. So do a lot of drawings, look at a lot of great work. Uh, spend a lot of time looking at work that inspires you and figuring out what it is you like about the work. Um, okay, so you have Blender. That's good. That's a good start. So keep working with Blender. Do lots of tutorials. Don't just copy the tutorials. Figure out the principles that you're learning and then apply them to your own projects. Look at stuff that you find inspiring. Follow other artists that you find inspiring, and just keep pushing. It's interesting. Like a lot of people starting out will see work and work from established artists who they really admire, and then they'll look at their own work and they'll get discouraged. And there's a gap between their level of taste and their ability to produce work at that level. In fact, Ira Glass, if you Google Ira Glass, who's an NPR radio personality, he's got a really interesting little discussion and take on taste. So I'd encourage you to look at that. But I'd also say don't just get mired down in looking at 3D artists. I mean, it's great if you want to be a 3D artist to look at other 3D artists, but look at painters and filmmakers and people who are really good at drawing and illustrating, and take in all kinds of creative work and let that inform the type of work that you want to make. The toughest thing, I think, is like developing your voice. It's figuring out the type of things that you want to make and how you want to make them and what you want to say with your work, like developing a style, so to speak. And that is a long, ongoing process that actually never really ends. Speaking of something never really ending, it's a good segue into finally saving out this image. It took nearly 35 minutes, which is a little too long, so thanks for bearing with me, guys. Let's throw this in Photoshop, do a last little bit of tweaking and color correcting, and we will be done. I'm just going into the curves here and adjusting things a little bit. Ollie, low poly modeling can be a good way to start, yeah, for sure. it's usually more readily achievable. And actually, yeah, I think low poly modeling is a good idea because you'll learn some of the principles of working in 3D that you wouldn't necessarily learn doing it other ways. And you know, to get used to 3D, it's a different way of thinking than working in 2 dimensions. So doing low poly stuff actually can be pretty useful. Now I'm going to use, let's see, I made a copy of the base image, and I'm going to make the contrast really high, but that's only so I can sort of make a selection. Select color range. I'm going to use that high contrast stuff just to make a selection here. And I'm going to copy and paste that, turn this guy off, and make kind of a bloom look. Maybe I'll actually leave this on and just turn it way down. A little bit more contrast in there. I'm just going to make a copy of that just so I can back up. Make it a little bit brighter. It's going to get these kind of blooming highlights. Too much. Just to get a little bit of softness going there. And turn that down here. Sort of gives us a little bit of a soft kind of bouncing highlight there, which I think is pretty nice. I also think it's a little bit too wide. Right center there, so I'm going to trim off that edge. Even come in and make it like super wide format. Kind of cool. Actually lends itself, that super wide format, to the look of this piece. It's a very wide format tree, so maybe it makes sense to have a wide format aspect ratio. All right. So the rendering took a little while, a little longer than I had hoped, but the modeling took a little less time than I anticipated, so maybe that's the balance we need to strike. Appreciate everyone tuning in for episode 152. Had a lot of fun putting this together, a very simplified, streamlined 3D model that I think has a ton of personality given how basic the setup is. Playing with some noises, some of the built-in surfaces that come with Cinema 4D, and I think we got a handsome little illustration of a bonsai tree here. So if you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm doing, hit me up at DLGNCE on Instagram or most of the socials. My portfolio can be found at diligence.studio. And until next time, keep at it, keep doing work that you find inspiring and enriching, and I will see you next week. This is Stuart saying goodbye. Later.